Charles Hardin Holley, known professionally as Bud Holley, was an American musician and singer-songwriter and a pioneer of rock and roll. Although his success lasted only a year and a half before his death in an airplane crash, Holley is described by critic Bruce Eder as the single most influential creative force in early rock and roll. His works and innovations inspired and influenced contemporary and later musicians, notably the Beatles, Elvis Costello, the Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan, and exerted a profound influence on popular music. In 2004, Rolling Stone magazine ranked Holley number 13 on its list of the 100 greatest artists of all time. Early life: Charles Hardin Holley was born on September 7, 1936, in Lubbock, Texas, to Lawrence Odell Holley and Ella Pauline Drake. In Philip Norman's biography, it is stated that his mother's family claimed to be descended from the English navigator Francis Drake. Holley was always called Buddy by his family. The youngest of three siblings, his older brothers Larry and Travis taught him to play a variety of instruments, including the guitar, four-string banjo and lap steel guitar. At the age of 5, Holley's young voice and exuberance won him a talent contest singing a then-popular song, "Have You Ever Gone Sailing?" In 1949, while still retaining his youthful soprano voice, he recorded a bluesy solo rendering of Hank Snow's My Two-Timin' Woman on a wire recorder borrowed by a friend who worked in a music shop. In 1952, he met Bob Montgomery at Hutchinson Junior High School. They shared an interest in music, and teamed up as Buddy and Bob. Initially influenced by bluegrass, they sang harmony duets at local clubs and high school talent shows. The duo performed on a local radio station KDAV Sunday broadcast that made them a top local act. Hutchinson Junior High School now has a mural honoring Holley, and Lubbock High School, where he sang in the school choir, also honors the musician. Career: The Crickets. Holley saw Elvis Presley sing in Lubbock in 1955, and began to incorporate a rockabilly style, similar to the Sun Records sound, which had a strong rhythm acoustic and slap bass. On October 15, 1955, Holley, along with Bob Montgomery and Larry Welborn, opened the bill for Presley in Lubbock, catching the eye of a Nashville talent scout. Holley's transition to rock continued when he opened for Bill Haley and his Comets at a local show organized by Eddie Crandall, the manager for Marty Robbins. Decca Records signed him to a contract in February 1956, following this performance, misspelling his name as Holley. He thereafter adopted the misspelled name for his professional career. Holley formed his own band, later to be called the Crickets, consisting of Holley, Key Sullivan, Joby Mauldin, and Jerry Allison. They went to Nashville for 3 recording sessions with producer Owen Bradley. Holley, however, chafed under a restrictive atmosphere that allowed him little input during the sessions. Among the tracks he recorded was an early version of That'll Be the Day, which took its title from a line delivered repeatedly by John Wayne's character, Ethan Edwards, in the 1956 film The Searchers. This initial version of the song was played slower and about 4 steps higher than the later hit version. Decca released 2 Holley singles, Blue Days, Black Nights, and Modern Don Juan, that failed to make an impression. On January 22, 1957, Decca informed Holley his contract would not be renewed, insisting, however, that he could not record the same songs for anyone else for 5 years. Holley then hired Norman Petty as manager, and the band began recording at Petty's studios in Clovis, New Mexico. Petty contacted music publishers and labels, and Brunswick Records, a subsidiary of Decca, signed the Crickets on March 19, 1957. Holley signed as a solo artist with another Decca subsidiary, Coral Records. This put him in the unusual position of having 2 recording contracts at the same time. On May 27, 1957, That'll Be the Day was released as a single, credited to the Crickets to try to bypass Decca's claimed legal rights. When the song became a hit, Decca decided not to press its claim. That'll Be the Day topped the Billboard US Best Sellers in Stores chart on September 23, and was number 1 on the UK singles chart for 3 weeks in November. The Crickets performed That'll Be the Day, and Peggy Sue on The Ed Sullivan Show on December 1, 1957. They also sang Peggy Sue on the Arthur Murray Party on December 29 and were given a polite introduction by Catherine Murray. The countscopes of these programs are the only record of their 1957 television appearances. Buddy Holly appeared on American Bandstand hosted by Dick Clark on ABC twice, on August 26, 1957 and October 28, 1958, as well as Clark's primetime TV series Saturday Night Beach Nut Show on October 25, 1958. Holly helped win over an all-black audience to rock and roll rockabilly when the Crickets were booked at New York's Apollo Theatre for August 16, Euro 22, 1957. Unlike the immediate acceptance shown in the 1978 movie The Buddy Holly Story, it actually took several performances for the audience to warm up to him. In August 1957, the Crickets were the only white performers on a national tour including black neighborhood theaters. As Holly was signed both as a solo artist and a member of the Crickets, 2 debut albums were released, The Chirping Crickets on November 27, 1957 and Buddy Holly on February 20, 1958. His singles Peggy Sue, and Oh Boy, with backing vocals later dubbed on by the Pics, reached the top 10 of United States and United Kingdom charts. Buddy Holly and the Crickets toured Australia in January 1958 and the UK in March. Their third and final album, That'll Be the Day, was put together from early recordings and was released in April. In the liner notes to Buddy Holly, the definitive collection, Billy Altman notes that Peggy Sue was originally written as Cindy Lou, but Holly changed it prior to recording as a tip of the hat to Crickets drummer Jerry Allison's girlfriend, Peggy Sue Gerron. Allison wanted the song to be named after Gerron to make up for a recent fight. The two later married. Holly wrote True Love Ways about his relationship with his wife, Maria Elena. The song was recorded on October 21, 1958 at Decca's Pythian Temple with Maria in attendance. Dick Jacob, Coral Brunswick's new head of artists and repertoire, served as both producer and conductor of the song's 18-piece orchestra that included members of the New York Symphony Orchestra, NBC Television's House Orchestra and Abraham Boomie Richman, formerly of Benny Goodman's band. Holly in New York. In June 1958, Holly met Maria Elena Santiago, a receptionist for Murray Deutsch, an executive for New York publisher Peer Southern Music. Holly managed to have Santiago invited to a luncheon at Howard Johnson's, thanks to Deutsch's secretary, Joe Harper. He asked her to have dinner with him that night at P.J. Clark's. Holly proposed marriage to her on their very first date. While we were having dinner, he got up and came back with his hands behind his back. He brought out a red rose and said, "This is for you. Would you marry me?" Within the beautiful red rose, there was a ring. I melted. Holly went to her guardian's house the next morning and Maria came running at him and jumped into his arms, which was a sign to him that it was a yes. They married in Lubbock on August 15, 1958, less than 2 months later. On what would have been their 50th wedding anniversary, she told the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, "I'd never had a boyfriend in my life. I'd never been on a date before. But when I saw Buddy, it was like magic. We had something special, love at first sight. It was like we were made for each other. He came into my life when I needed him, and I came into his." The newlyweds honeymooned in Acapulco. Maria Elena traveled on tours, doing everything from the laundry to equipment setup to ensuring the group got paid. However, many fans became aware of his marriage only after his death. The ambitious Holly became increasingly interested in the New York music publishing scene, while his bandmates wanted to go back home to Lubbock. As a result, the group split up in late 1958. The Hollies settled in apartment 4 hours of the Brevoort Apartments located at 11 Fifth Avenue in Greenwich Village. Here he recorded the series of acoustic songs, including Crying, Waiting, Hoping, and What to Do, known as the Apartment Tapes, which were released after his death. The Hollies frequented many of New York's music venues, including the Village Gate, Blue Note, Village Vanguard, and Johnny Johnson's. Maria Elena reported Buddy was keen to learn fingerstyle flamenco guitar, and would often visit her aunt's home to play the piano there. He wanted to develop collaborations between soul singers and rock and roll, hoping to make an album with Ray Charles and gospel legend Mahalia Jackson. He also had ambitions to work in film, like Elvis Presley and Eddie Cochran, and registered for acting classes with Lee Strasberg's Actors Studio, where the likes of Marlon Brando and James Dean had trained. According to Billy Altman's liner notes to the Geffen Universal compilation, Buddy Holly, The Definitive Collection, in addition to True Love Ways, during the October 1958 sessions at Decca's Pythian Temple, Holly also recorded 2 other songs, It Doesn't Matter Anymore, and Raining in My Heart. The songs were firsts for Holly, not only in the use of orchestral backing players, but also the tracks were his first stereo recordings. They were also to be his last formal recording studio sessions. Although Holly had already begun to become disillusioned with Norman Petty before meeting Maria Elena, it was through her and her Aunt Provi, the head of Latin American music at Pierre Southern, that he began to fully realize what was going on with his manager, who was paying the band's royalties into his own company's account. Holly was having trouble getting his royalties from Petty, so he hired the noted lawyer Harold Arenstein at the recommendation of his friends the Everly Brothers, who had engaged Arenstein following disputes with their own manager, Wesley Rose. Yet, with the money still being withheld by Petty and with rent due, Buddy was forced to go back on the road. Death. Holly was offered a spot in the Winter Dance Party, a 3-week tour across the Midwest opening on January 23, 1959, by the GAC agency, with other notable performers such as Dion and the Belmonts, Ritchie Valens, and J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson. He assembled a backing band consisting of Tommy Allsup, Waylon Jennings and Carl Bunch, and billed them as the Crickets. Following a performance on the tour at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa on February 2, 1959, Holly chartered a small airplane to take him and 2 others nearby Mason City to Muirhead, Minnesota, the next stop on the tour. The charter's pilot, Roger Peterson, took off in a snowstorm even though he was not qualified to fly by instruments only. Following takeoff in the early morning hours of February 3, Holly, along with Ritchie Valens, J.P. Richardson, and the pilot, were all killed when the plane crashed shortly after takeoff. Rock performer, archivist and music historian, Harry Hepcat, wrote in his article about Buddy Holly, although the plane came down only 5 miles northwest of the airport, no one saw or heard the crash. The bodies lay in the blowing snow through the night. February indeed made us shiver, but it was more than the cold of February that 3rd day of the month in 1959. It was the shiver of a greater, sometimes senseless, reality invading our sheltered, partying, teenage life of the 50s. Bandmate Waylon Jennings had given up his seat on the ill-fated flight, causing Holly to jokingly tell Jennings, "I hope your old bus freezes up." Jennings shot back facetiously, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes." Reportedly, it was a statement that would haunt Jennings for decades. Holly's funeral was held on February 7, 1959, at the Tabernacle Baptist Church in Lubbock. The service was officiated by Ben D. Johnson, who had presided at the Hollies' wedding just months earlier. The pallbearers were Jerry Allison, Joe B. Mauldin, Keith Sullivan, Bob Montgomery, Sonny Curtis and Phil Everly. Waylon Jennings was unable to attend due to his commitment to the still touring Winter Dance Party. Holly's body was interred in the City of Lubbock Cemetery in the eastern part of the city. His headstone carries the correct spelling of his surname and a carving of his Fender Stratocaster guitar. Holly's wife, Mara Elena Holley, was pregnant at the time of the crash. She miscarried the day after learning of his death, reportedly due to a psychological trauma. Because of this incident, authorities found it necessary, in the months following, to implement a policy against announcing victims' names until after families had first been informed. Mara Elena Holley did not attend the funeral, and has never visited the gravesite. She later told the Avalanche Journal, "In a way, I blame myself. I was not feeling well when he left. I was 2 weeks pregnant, and I wanted Buddy to stay with me, but he had scheduled that tour. It was the only time I wasn't with him. And I blame myself because I know that, if only I had gone along, Buddy never would have gotten into that airplane. The first song to commemorate the musicians was 3 Stars by Tommy D. This song was recorded just one day after the disaster occurred. 12 years later, in 1971, Don McLean released his single, American P. to commemorate Buddy Holly's death and further accentuate the loss of the United States innocents. Don McLean's song began the reference to the tragedy as the day the music died. Influence: Holly set the template for the standard rock and roll band, 2 guitars, bass, and drums. He was one of the first in the genre to write, produce, and perform his own songs. Holly managed to bridge the racial divide that marked music in America. Along with Elvis and others, Holly made rock and roll, with its roots in rockabilly country music and blues-inspired rhythm and blues music, more popular among a broad white audience. From listening to their recordings, one had difficulty determining if the Crickets, the name of Buddy's band, were white or black singers. Holly indeed sometimes played with black musicians Little Richard and Chuck Berry, and incorporated the Bo Diddley beat in several songs. The Crickets were only the second white rock group to tour Great Britain. Holly was also famous for his distinctive, black-framed eyeglasses, which have since become a lasting part of his iconic image. As a result, countless other musicians were inspired to wear their own glasses during their performances. Initially, Holly was hesitant to wear his glasses on stage, out of fear that they would contrast with his rebellious image. But since Holly had very poor vision and contact lenses weren't as prevalent in the 1950s, Holly was left with little choice but to wear his glasses. Contrary to popular belief, teenagers John Lennon and Paul McCartney did not attend a Holly concert, although they watched his television appearance on Sunday night at the London Palladium. Ian Whitcomb once said Buddy Holly and the Crickets had the most influence on the Beatles. Lennon and McCartney later cited Holly as a primary influence. During breaks of the Beatles' first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on February 9, 1964, CBS coordinator Vic Collindra talked with Paul McCartney and John Lennon. Lennon asked him if he was working on the show in 1957 when one of their favorite groups was a guest. They were huge fans of Buddy Holly and the Crickets, and John asked me, Buddy Holly, was this the stage he was on? I said, yeah, in fact, I held cue cards for them. And he said, oh, my God. It was quite an experience. The Beatles did a cover version of Words of Love that was a close reproduction of Holly's version, released on late 1964's Beatles for Sale. During the January 1969 sessions for the Let It Be album, the Beatles played a slow impromptu version of Mailman, Bring Me No More Blues although not written by Holly, it was popularized by him with Lennon mimicking Holly's vocal style. The recording was eventually released in the mid-1990s on Anthology 3. Also, Holly's That'll Be the Day, which had been covered by the Quarrymen, was released on Anthology 1. In addition, John Lennon recorded a cover version of Peggy Sue on his 1975 album Rock 'n' Roll. McCartney owns the publishing rights to Holly's song catalog. A 17-year-old Bob Dylan attended the January 31, 1959 show, 2 nights before Holly's death. Dylan referred to this in his 1998 Grammy acceptance speech for his Time Out of Mind being named Album of the Year. And I just want to say that when I was 16 or 17 years old, I went to see Buddy Holly play at Duluth National Guard Armory and I was 3 feet away from him. And he looked at me. And I just have some sort of feeling that he was I don't know how or why but I know he was with us all the time we were making this record in some kind of way. Keith Richards attended one of Holly's performances, where he heard Not Fade Away for the first time. The Rolling Stones had an early hit covering the song. The launch of Bobby V's successful musical career resulted from Holly's death, when he was selected to replace Holly on the tour that continued after the plane crash. Holly's profound influence on V's singing style can be heard in such songs as Rubber Ball and Run to Him. Holly influenced many other singers during and after a career that lasted barely 2 years. Keith Richards once said Holly had an influence on everybody. In an August 24, 1978, Rolling Stone interview, Bruce Springsteen told Dave Marsh, I play Buddy Holly every night before I go on. That keeps me honest. The Grateful Dead performed Not Fade Away 530 times over the course of their career, making it their seventh most performed song. The song also appears on 8 of their official live recording releases. Various rock and roll histories have asserted the singing group The Hollies were named in homage to Buddy Holly. According to the band's website, although the group admired Holly, their name was inspired primarily by the sprigs of holly in evidence around Christmas of 1962. Don McLean's popular 1971 ballad American Pie is inspired by Holly and the day of the plane crash. The American Pie album is dedicated to Holly. On September 7, 1994, Weezer released their single Buddy Holly. Discography. Studio albums: The Chirping Crickets, Buddy Holly, That'll Be the Day. Buddy Holly released 3 albums in his lifetime. However, he recorded so prolifically that Coral Records was able to release brand new albums and singles for 10 years after his death, although the technical quality was mixed, some being studio quality and others home recordings. Buddy Holly continued to be promoted and sold as an active artist, and his records had a loyal following, especially in Europe. The demand for unissued Holly material was so great that Norman Petty resorted to overdubbing whatever he could find, alternate takes of studio recordings, originally rejected masters, Crying, Waiting, Hoping, and the other 5 1959 tracks, and even Holly's amateur demos from 1954. The last new Buddy Holly album was Giant, issued in 1969. Between the 1959 Euro 60 overdubs produced by Jack Hansen, the 1960s overdubs produced by Petty, various alternate takes, and Holly's undubbed originals, collectors can often choose from multiple versions of the same song. There are also many different versions of Holly's greatest hits as well as covers compilation albums of Buddy's songs performed by various artists. Film and musical depictions. Holly's life story inspired a Hollywood biographical film, The Buddy Holly Story. Star Gary Busey received a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Actor for his portrayal of Holly. The movie was widely criticized by the rock community and Holly's friends and family for its inaccuracies. This led Paul McCartney to produce and host his own documentary about Holly in 1985, titled The Real Buddy Holly Story. This video includes interviews with Keith Richards, Phil and Don Everly, Sonny Curtis, Jerry Allison, Holly's family, and McCartney himself, among others. In 1987, Marshall Crenshaw portrayed Buddy Holly in the movie La Bamba. He is featured performing at the Surf Ballroom and boarding the doomed airplane with Ritchie Valens and the Big Bopper. Crenshaw's version of Crying, Waiting, Hoping is featured on the La Bamba original motion picture soundtrack. Buddy The Buddy Holly Story, the jukebox musical depicting his life, is credited as being the first of its kind, spawning a breed of jukebox shows, including the likes of Mamma Mia and We Will Rock You. Buddy as it is abbreviated on occasion is still running in the UK after 22 years, with a UK tour that went out in February 2011. Holly was depicted in the Quantum Leap episode entitled, How the Test Was Won, although his identity isn't revealed until the very end of the episode. According to this episode, Dr. Sam Beckett's influences Buddy Holly to change the lyrics from Piggy, Suey to Peggy Sue, thus setting up Holly's future hit song. There are also a number of acts both in the US and UK who specialize in performing Holly's songs. In 2010, Guy Kent portrayed a modern-day interpretation of Holly in the independent film The Day the Music Died. The film has yet to be theatrically released. Lubbock. Holly was based in Lubbock, Texas, as his career took off between 1956 and 1958. In 1980, Grant Speed sculpted a statue of Holly playing his Fender guitar. This statue is the centerpiece of Lubbock's Walk of Fame, which honors notable people who contributed to Lubbock's musical history. Other memorials to Buddy Holly include a street named in his honor and the Buddy Holly Center, which contains a museum of Holly memorabilia as well as a fine arts gallery. The center is located on Crickets Avenue, one street over from Buddy Holly Avenue, in what used to be the Fort Worth and Denver South Plains Railway Depot. In 2010, Grant Speed's statue was taken down for refurbishment, and construction began on a new Walk of Fame. On May 9, 2011, the city of Lubbock held a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Buddy and Maria Elena Holley Plaza, the new home of the statue and a Walk of Fame. The plaza is across the street from the museum. Hollywood Walk of Fame. On September 7, 2011, he received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame posthumously. His widow, Maria Elena Santiago, attended, as did Phil Everly, Peter Asher, Priscilla Presley and actor Gary Busey, who played Holly in the Buddy Holly story. In popular culture, in the animated TV series Pearly, Buddy Holly is parodied Buggy Holly. In an episode of The Young Ones, Mike the Cool Person discovered Holly hanging upside down from the ceiling of his new bedroom, despite the episode being aired 24 years after his death. Holly performed a song about his new insect diet called Cuckoo Daddy Long Legs before dying when his supports snapped and he fell headfirst through the floor. Buddy Holly's song True Love Ways was used in Panda Cheese's Never Say No to Panda television commercials, created for Egyptian company Arab Dairy. The commercials became viral on YouTube and also revived True Love Ways' popularity. Even today, most of the comments on True Love Ways videos refer to the Panda Cheese ad. See also, Buddy Holly is alive and well on Ganymede, a Euro-comedic science fiction novel, Listen to Me, Buddy Holly, a Euro tribute album and broadcast, references. Further reading. External links, Buddy Holly News Archives at the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, Buddy Holly and the Crickets.com, BuddyHollyLives.info, Buddy Holly at the Internet Movie Database, Buddy Holly Discography at Music Brains, Buddy Holly at Find a Grave, Buddy Holly, a Euro Sessions and Cover Songs, Telegraph article on the last songs written by Buddy Holly, The Day the Music Died at the Death of Rock, The Archive, The Texas Experience, a Euro John Connolly presents Buddy Holly, from the Texas Archive of the Moving Image.